Hello, fashion lovers. I'm Sofi welcoming you to my studio. Today I'm going to demonstrate some very popular stitches such as the edge stitch and the welt stitch. The edge stitch and the welt stitch are very similar. I'm going to demonstrate them together because they are very similar with only one step difference. And also, these are stitches that are found in jean jackets, denim pants, and they come sometimes together, sometimes separate. But those are some stitches that are used on those garments and very popular. Here, let's examine on these denim pants. The inseam on these pants are stitched with the edge stitch. The name describes it being at the edge of the fold. On this jean jacket, you can see the edge stitch is employed to stitch the pocket, the welt pocket on this jacket. Meanwhile, here the edge stitch, which is this first one, blue one, comes together with the welt stitch, which is the yellow stitch, which is 1/4 inch away from the fold. Meanwhile, the edge stitch is about 1/16 of an inch away from the fold. Here also both of the stitches, the edge stitch, the first one, and the welt stitch appear together on this inseam of the pants. The fact that these stitches appear on denim jackets or pants, this often means they're pretty sturdy stitches. And they're sturdy is because usually for each stitch, for the edge stitch and the welt stitch, in order for us to complete them, we stitch twice. First connect the fabrics together and top stitch on the right side of the garment. After seeing the edge stitch and the welt stitch on those garments, now we're examining them on samples that you can do in order to practice and learn how they're done. As I said, on this one, you see the stitch is 1/16 of an inch, generous 1/16 of an inch away from the fold. It's a top stitch, which means from inside we stitch the seam allowances together, and then on top we top stitch it. That's why you see 2 stitches right there, meaning when I apply 2 stitches on this seam only, the fabric is put together really tight. Again, the welt stitch is done exactly and precisely the same way, just the difference is that now this top stitch is done 1/4 of an inch away from my fold, and therefore underneath you can see 2 stitches parallel to each other, but they're 1/4 inch apart. The similarity between these stitches are both of them are making the garment very durable and sturdy. That is required in denim pants case. But at the same time, they add some decorations to the garment. Sometimes they can go together. We can apply them together as you have seen on other garments. Going back to the jean jacket, I would like to show you that here in this case, both of the stitches are together. Again, the edge stitch is 1/16 of an inch away from the fold. The welt stitch is a little bit further away, about 3/8 of an inch. But again, this is a welt stitch. Now, if we look inside, you can see those stitches next to each other, parallel to each other, and they're about 3/8 of an inch apart. That's how it looks together. I will suggest you to take 2 pieces of muslin, about 14-15 inches long and 4-5 inches wide, 2 pieces. This is the direction of my fabric, the straight grain, and press the fabric, and then I added some decorations, textile design if you will, for me to know which one is the right side and which one is the wrong side of the fabric, because for the beginners it's very important to get used to the sides of the fabric and how we put them together and how we stitch them. So I take one piece and place it face to face, here like this, okay, like this, and I'm going to pin these fabrics to each other on a 1/2 inch line, because my seam allowance is going to be 1/2 inch, so about 1/2 inch away from the edge I'm going to pin my fabrics with small pinches so your fabrics would not twist and shift. What I mean again, please don't pin like this, let's say, like a huge pinch, but instead you're doing small, nice, neat pinch like this. Now I'm going to stitch 1/2 inch seam allowance along this line. So as I said, I'm going to stitch 1/2 inch seam allowance, so even up your edge of the fabric with the 1/2 inch mark on your tray right there. And first you're going to secure stitch back and forth as if you are stitching a real garment. And I'm stitching 1/2 inch seam allowance. At the end, secure stitch back and forth and cut.
And go.
Okay, so here 1/2 inch seam allowance that is stitched. Okay, so I'm pressing so my threads, my stitch and the fabric kind of like relax and start working together. Now, before I apply my second stitch, which is the edge stitch, I need to finish this uneven edge, I mean fraying edge, because I am not going to have a chance to do that if I leave it for later. If you have an overlock stitch, you can finish the edge with overlock stitch. If you don't have it, you can use zigzag to finish. Before I go ahead and do my zigzag sample for you, please note that I overlocked both of my seam allowances together, not separately, because I'm going to push them on one side together. Okay, so I changed my stitches to zigzag, bigger zigzag stitch, and okay, so I zigzagged the edge of my fabric. Since this machine, regular machine, doesn't cut the edge clean, I will be cleaning my little thread sticking out and press this again. So let's press our seam one more time so it's nice and flat and looks like this. Now I can push the seam allowance to any side I want to. There's no difference unless there's specific side that when you make a real garment you want the seam allowances to go towards. So then I kind of stretch my fabrics like this, so my fabric will not chew like that on the right side. So open up like this and push your seam allowance towards whichever direction you want to. Hold it like that and press it. You see here, you don't want the fabric to come over and kind of get folded like this. So that's why I'm making sure that I open up my seam flat and nice. Now I'm going to stitch either 1/16 of an inch from the edge or 1/4 of an inch from the edge. Again, if it is 1/16 of an inch, that will give me an edge stitch. If it is 1/4 of an inch away, that will give me my welt stitch.
5, 4, 3.
First of all, we do secure stitch, couple stitches back and forth. Now I'm ready to stitch straight. In order for me to stay straight, what I do is I don't look at the needle, but I look at the fold of the fabric and where it hits the presser foot. If I keep them together all the time, most probably my stitch is going to be straight. Then secure stitch as we do on real garments and stop. Again, this is the right side of my fabric where you can see my edge stitch, and then you can see my seam allowances, both of them together, overlocked and pushed on one side, and underneath you see 2 stitches parallel to each other, 1/16 of an inch away. So that's my edge stitch. So again, repeating, if you want to do the welt stitch, all steps are exactly the same. The only difference would be when you make this top stitch, not 1/16 of an inch away from the fold, but 1/4 of an inch. So you can do them separately, not on the same sample, so you can see them separately together. Here on this other sample, I make the same stitch the same way, but 1/4 inch away from the fold, and that became my welt stitch. I'm going to press my stitch one more time to get rid of these ripples. By the way, pressing your garment while you are stitching, pressing open helps to come up with higher quality garment. So here how it looks. I will clean up the edges of this sample, which is going to go into my group of samples. Here's my sample, ready and presentable. Can you see, it will be a very nice thing if you create that habit of making every little piece, big or small, make them very important, because that will train your hands to be creating clean and presentable garments in the future. So pretty much, if you know how to stitch the edge stitch, you can stitch the welt stitch. So this will conclude my demonstration for today. Please come back. If you liked my demonstration, please like or subscribe for my videos. My name is Sofi. See you next time.